Welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at AI image generation,
Okay.
and more specifically, how these models are actually working under the hood.
Yeah.
Not just looking at what they create, but
Yeah,
how are they learning and why do they sometimes kind of mess up?
exactly.
We've got some research that you sent over on this really fascinating technique
Yeah.
called auto guidance,
Uh-huh.
and it seems like it tackles this tricky balance between
Right.
getting that photorealism that everybody wants,
Yeah.
but then also keeping that, like wild AI generation.
Liking that variety.
Yeah, keeping the AI weirdness
Yeah.
that everybody loves so much. So we're going to try to use the
Ah.
Feynman technique here to really break this down step by step,
Okay. Sounds good.
which basically means just explaining everything in really simple terms
Mhm.
so we can all understand it.
Yeah.
Find those aha moments.
Right.
And even come up with some real world examples to help
Yeah.
it all stick.
Cool. I like it.
All right, so to kick things off, let's look at the foundation
Okay.
of a lot of these models, and that's denoising diffusion.
Yes.
Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. So imagine you've got a photo
Okay.
and you slowly start adding noise to it,
Okay.
like static on a TV screen.
Uh-huh.
And eventually that image becomes completely obscured by noise.
Right.
Denoising diffusion is basically an AI learning to reverse that process.
Okay.
So going from pure noise back to a recognizable image.
Okay, so it's kind of like the AI is learning to unstatic a picture.
Yeah, exactly.
But how does it know which static to remove first?
Right.
Or in what order to remove the static?
Yeah, it's not random at all.
Okay.
So it uses something called a score function to guide it.
Okay.
And so think of that like a heat map overlaid on that noisy image.
Okay.
So the brighter areas on that heat map signal to the AI.
Okay.
Like add more detail here as it's going from noise back to the image.
Oh, that's a cool analogy. So it's like the score function is kind of like a roadmap
Exactly.
for the AI to restore the image.
Uh-huh.
So where does the AI get this score function from?
So the AI actually learns that score function by studying tons of real images.
Okay.
It observes how those real images degrade into noise,
Okay.
and then it uses that knowledge to reverse the process.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like watching a movie in reverse
Exactly.
and then figuring out how all the special effects were done.
Yeah, and then recreating it.
Cool. So it learns the rules of how images degrade,
Yeah.
and then it applies them in reverse to create something new.
Right.
So I know you mentioned that these models have some limitations.
Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges?
Well, one of the key challenges is that they can become a bit too good
Okay.
at avoiding mistakes during training.
Okay.
So they get penalized
Yeah.
for not being able to generate every single possible image,
Okay.
including those rare or unusual ones.
Right.
So what ends up happening is they play it safe and they stick to generating the most common and predictable outputs.
Okay.
And this is what's referred to as a conservative fit to the data.
Okay.
So it's like the AI is trying to cover all of its bases,
Right.
but it ends up being a bit hesitant to kind of explore.
Right. So if you ask it to draw a cat, you might get a
Yeah.
very textbook cat,
Right, a very generic cat.
but not one with
Yeah,
unique markings or a quirky personality.
exactly.
Okay. So it's like the AI is stuck in a creative rut,
Yes.
and we need to find a way to encourage it to be more adventurous.
Yeah, we need to give it a little nudge.
So this is where this concept of guidance comes in,
Exactly.
where we're trying to nudge the AI
Mm-hmm.
in a direction that we want it to go
Yep.
to get more creative outputs.
That's right.
So one of the methods that I know of is classifier-free guidance.
Yes, CFG.
So imagine the AI has two distinct brains.
Okay.
One focuses on the visual aspects of the image,
Yeah, like shapes, colors, textures.
exactly.
Yep.
And then the other one focuses on the text prompts,
Yeah,
like a cat wearing a top hat riding a unicycle.
right.
So CFG basically amplifies the prompt frame
Yeah,
to
Wow.
make sure that the image aligns with your description.
exactly.
But if CFG is so good at creating these specific images, what's the problem?
So while CFG is really fantastic at getting those specific details, right,
Okay.
there's a bit of a trade-off.
Okay.
Sometimes it can come at the cost of that AI spark.
Okay.
Those unique, unexpected details
Yeah.
that make AI art so fascinating.
Okay.
So you kind of get a perfectly executed but maybe somewhat predictable image.
So it seems like we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here,
Right.
where you've got AIs that are hesitant to take risks,
Yeah.
and then you have these techniques that are too controlling.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
How do we guide these models?
Yeah,
without stifling all their creativity.
Exactly.
So that's where the research you sent over on auto guidance comes in. So how does auto guidance address this challenge?
Well, it offers a pretty clever solution.
Okay.
Instead of relying on two separate brains,
Okay.
it actually trains a second AI,
Okay.
which is like a less powerful version of the main model.
Oh, like a little mini version of it?
Yeah, kind of like an apprentice
All right.
learning from a master artist.
So this apprentice AI helps the main model become more creative.
Right.
How?
So by comparing its output
Okay.
to the apprentice model,
Okay.
the main AI essentially identifies its own blind spots.
Oh.
So the areas where it's most likely to make mistakes or play it too safe,
Okay.
it's like having a fresh pair of eyes,
Okay.
or in this case, a less experienced AI,
Right.
point out potential areas for improvement.
So the main AI is learning from a less developed version of itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like using its own history of mistakes to guide it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
But wouldn't relying on like a quote-unquote weaker AI potentially slow down the training process?
Well, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And it's a concern you might expect.
Right.
But surprisingly, it doesn't seem to be a significant issue.
Okay.
Remember, this weaker AI isn't trained on like different data or given a different task.
Right.
It's just a less powerful version of the main AI.
Okay.
So it could be something like fewer training iterations
Right.
or a smaller network size.
Okay, so it's working with the same knowledge base, just not quite as refined.
Exactly.
Okay, so does this actually like translate to better results?
Yeah.
Like how do we know auto guidance actually works?
Well, the researchers put it to the test.
Okay.
And the results are actually quite compelling.
Okay.
So they tested it on several large image data sets,
Okay.
including the famous ImageNet,
ImageNet.
which contains millions of images across thousands of categories.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and even data sets used by millions.
Oh, wow.
So it's already improving the images we see online.
Okay, so it's not just theoretical. It's
no.
actually having a real-world impact.
Yeah.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of like how this works in practice?
Sure. So they used a prompt
Okay.
that I think really highlights the difference between like traditional CFG
Okay.
and auto guidance.
Okay.
And the prompt was
Yeah.
a blue jay standing on a large basket of rainbow macarons.
Okay. I like it.
So with CFG, the
Mhm.
images were technically well executed,
Okay.
but they kind of lacked that creative flair,
Okay.
you know, that sense of the unexpected.
Right. So it's like you get a perfectly rendered blue jay
Exactly.
on top of like
Yeah.
a basket of perfectly symmetrical macarons.
Right.
Pretty, but not exciting.
Yeah, not particularly interesting.
But when auto guidance,
Yeah.
the images were like way more dynamic and interesting.
Yes. The composition was more unique. The
Yeah.
colors were more vibrant.
Yeah.
There was just a stronger sense of like artistic style.
Yeah.
It was like the AI had learned to inject its own personality.
Right. So it's not just about making the AI more accurate.
It's helping it to be more creative.
Yeah, like expressive.
Expressive and creative,
Uh-huh.
which opens up like a whole world of possibilities.
It does.
And leads to like some really interesting questions
Yeah.
about the future of art and creativity.
Right. Like if AI can learn to be more creative,
Yeah.
does that change our understanding of like what it means to be an artist?
Yeah, that's a question that deserves some serious thought. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, I'm curious about like the practical implications of auto guidance.
Right.
Like what are some real world applications that you see this impacting?
Well, one area that comes to mind is like video game development.
Okay.
You know, imagine being able to create unique characters and creatures
Yeah.
and even entire worlds just using a few text prompts.
Oh,
And not just like generic cookie cutter designs,
right.
but like truly imaginative and original creations.
That would be a game changer.
Right.
That would revolutionize the gaming industry.
Yeah. No more spending countless hours.
Meticulously crafting every detail by hand.
Yeah, like game designers could focus on the bigger picture,
Exactly.
like the story, the gameplay.
Yeah.
And then the AI handles all of the visuals.
Yeah, the visual heavy lifting.
The visual heavy lifting,
Yeah.
exactly. And it goes way beyond gaming too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like architecture, product design, even like scientific visualization.
Right.
We could use AI to generate like
Yeah.
a huge range of creative possibilities, really quickly and easily explore new ideas,
Right.
push their boundaries of what's possible.
Exactly.
It's like having an army of AI artists at your disposal.
Right.
But I know you mentioned that while auto guidance shows a lot of promise,
Yes.
there's still a lot of research that needs to be done. So where do we need to dive deeper?
Well, one area that needs further exploration is
Go
the
here.
training process for that weaker AI model.
Right,
Remember, it's not just about creating a smaller model.
right.
It needs to kind of exhibit the same types of errors as the main AI, but just to a greater degree.
So it's like a balancing act.
Right.
If the apprentice model is too weak
Yeah.
or too different from the master,
Mm-hmm.
then the guidance won't be effective.
Exactly.
You got to find that sweet spot.
We need to find that sweet spot.
Yeah, the optimal level of weakness
Yeah, the optimal level of
to
weakness.
get the right kind of guidance.
Right.
Okay, so what other areas of auto guidance could use a little bit more research?
Well, another interesting avenue is exploring different types of guidance signals.
Okay.
Currently, auto guidance relies solely on
Okay.
the differences in output between the main AI and the guiding AI.
Okay.
But what if we could incorporate other forms of feedback?
Oh, like feedback from human artists?
Yeah, exactly.
That would be really
That
interesting.
would add a whole new dimension to the process.
Right.
Imagine a system where human artists could provide real-time feedback to the AI,
Oh.
help it to refine its style, explore new creative directions.
That would be amazing.
Or we could even develop metrics for evaluating the creativity of an image
Okay.
and then allowing the AI to learn from its own successes and failures.
Wow, so many possibilities.
Yeah,
It really seems like we're just scratching the surface here.
right.
But I think this research also raises some really big questions
Yeah.
about the nature of creativity itself. Like, does the fact that AI can learn to be more creative,
Right.
does that change how we define art?
That's a really complex question and one that we could probably spend hours discussing.
For sure.
But I think it's important to remember that art has always been
Yeah.
about more than just technical skill.
Okay.
It's about expression and emotion
Mm-hmm.
and connecting with an audience on a deeper level.
So AI can generate like really stunning images,
Right.
really technically impressive.
Yeah.
But it's the human element
Uh-huh.
that really elevates it to art.
I think so.
The intent, the meaning
Yeah.
behind the work.
Mhm.
So it seems like the future of art is heading towards like a partnership between humans and AI.
Yeah, collaboration.
A collaboration where we both bring our strengths to the table.
Exactly.
But obviously with any powerful technology comes responsibility.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that it's used ethically and thoughtfully.
Absolutely. As AI becomes more sophisticated and more pervasive,
Yeah.
we really need to be mindful of its impact on society. We need to make sure it's enhancing our lives,
Yeah.
not manipulating or deceiving us.
We need to be vigilant
Yeah.
about the ethical implications of AI art.
Right.
Work to establish those guidelines for development and use.
Exactly. The future of AI is in our hands.
It is.
It's up to us to shape it and
Yeah.
make sure it's used for good.
Well, this has been a truly enlightening deep dive.
It has.
From the technical intricacies of denoising diffusion and auto guidance
Yeah.
to the philosophical questions about AI and creativity, we've covered a lot today.
We have.
So thank you for joining us, and until next time.
Thanks for having me.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep creating.